Welcome, everyone, to this week's interview. This week, we're doing something a little bit different. We're looking at the NASCAR Cup Series, kind of reviewing what the year looked like in 2021. Today, I'm joined by Christian, a.k.a. Will, a.k.a. Savage NASCAR. He's going to help me kind of jump through a lot of these questions that we have prepared, and I'll share my opinion. He'll share his opinion. Then I guess the viewers at home will and share their views in the comment section, or they can just think it to themselves. How are you how are you doing today, Christian?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad we're finally getting this video out. Just been really slammed schedule wise, but yeah, looking forward to this, and thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
I guess jumping into it, first off, best race of the year. For me, I think it came down to either Bristol #2 or the Roval. And I think it's kind of like they were both like cutoff races. And I think that you have that drama of both races. You didn't know what was going to happen then. Like you had stuff happening, car spinning, everywhere. But also just the excitement of what is going to happen. I feel like both races had 4 to 5 people right there on the bubble, where just one lap you would have these 3 people in, the next lap you wouldn't have those people in. So I feel like it would come down to probably a tie between the Roval and then the second Bristol race. What say you, Christian?
There were so many great races this year. I mean, even starting off with the Daytona 500, we saw a new winner, Michael McDowell, in that crazy finish. There was a lot of great races this year. I'd say this was probably the year where we saw the most great races in a long time. We saw great races in the Xfinity Series. One of those being the Bristol race at night, where the AJ Allmendinger and Austin Cindric crashed across the line. We saw, what was the other one? The Indy Road Course in the Cup Series with Chase Briscoe and Denny Hamlin, and all the craziness that happened with that. Something new. I feel like Circuit of Americas would have been a better race if it didn't rain. And there was just a lot, man. Talladega, that whole weekend at Talladega was amazing. I was there. And I would say the best race of the year has to be between, I have to say it might be either Talladega or Daytona, but also the Roval, like you mentioned, the Roval was really good too. Bristol Dirt was great. The first Talladega race was good as well. And then the Southern 500 was also another banger. So it's really hard to choose the best race of the year. I mean, there was just so many of them. The Martinsville race too. So for me, I can't pick one, man.
It's a good problem to have, because leading into the season, Fox was saying this is the greatest season ever. And it's kind of hard to back that up. But I think it's been a while since I've had a season that I look back on and I think, man, this is a great race. This is a great moment. This is I feel like each week you had a different story being written. And as a fan, I really loved it.
I think this was the best season we've seen since either 2016 or 2014, in my opinion. Both 2014 was crazy, the first year of the playoff. That was an insane season, especially what happened in the playoff and the drama with the points. And 2016 as well, with Jimmy Johnson in the 7th championship and the battle for that. So I feel like this was a great season. So that's what I'd say about that one.
Moving on, this next question, I phrased it into driver of the year not named Larson, because I feel like Larson was a very easy choice for the answer to this. But I feel like if you look past Larson's historic season, I went back and forth with it, because there's a couple of people that I thought, well, this person shined, this person shined. But at the end of the day, I think it was Denny Hamlin. And I know he's not the most popular guy. After this season, he probably lost some more fans with some on-track stuff. But I just feel like his consistency blew me away with, even though he didn't have the wins at the end of the year, there were so many races where if one thing goes a different way, he's the winner. So it almost was, he could have easily had the season that Larson had if, like I said, a pit stop goes a different way, or if this person doesn't get that push, at this racetrack. So I feel like for me, the driver of the year not named Larson go to Denny Hamlin.
That was the same exact answer I had. Denny Hamlin, he didn't win as much this year.
Mhm.
And like you mentioned, he lost a lot of fans for his antics and his crying at Martinsville.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, Hamlin, his stats were pretty insane, even though he didn't get as many wins as last season.
Mhm.
His average running position was 7.4, which is the most of any of the drivers this season. He also had the most laps run with 9,136. His average driver rating here with my stats I have that I put together, Hamlin had a 109.4 average driver rating, which is second most to Larson.
Mhm.
He also had the second most laps led with 1,502.
Yeah.
And yeah, Hamlin was just at the top of almost every category. He also had 703 fastest laps run. So, I mean, I have to agree with you. Denny Hamlin, I think,
Mhm.
would be the best driver this season other than Larson. Then after that, I'd have to say it could be an argument for Alex Bowman,
Yeah.
this showman at number 3. So, yeah, I feel like we both agree about that one right there.
Yeah, I feel like with Bowman, it was so weird because it really is like two different seasons. Like on one hand, you have the guy that's like picking up these wins, and I think might be mistaken. Was it 4 wins he ended the year with?
Yeah, Bowman
Okay.
had 4 wins.
I
Trish
couldn't remember
Jr.
if it was
had
4
4
or
as
5.
well.
Yeah, and so it went back and forth because Bowman was someone I thought about. Like I was like, you have to like when a guy wins, like it's just tied for second best. Like that's a good season,
Yeah.
Moving on. The biggest story of the year, for me, it was the return of Hendrick's dominance because it had been a couple of years since Hendrick had been there. I think that there was some people, to me, I thought, well, Hendrick's going to be there, but it's hard. When I think of dominance, I think of a team that every one of their drivers is a threat to win, like on almost a weekly basis. And with Hendrick, I feel like all 4 of their drivers had good seasons. Like you had, William Byron might not have been winning all the races, but he was up front. You had Alex Bowman that he might not be running up front every race, but if he is up front, he was a threat to win. So I feel like to me, the story of the year was Hendrick returning to, form or the classic Hendrick that we expect and having all 4 cars be competitive.
I have to agree with you on that. I mean, Hendrick, they were so dominant this year. And there was a stretch where, if I'm correct, they won 4 or 5 straight races in a row. And we saw the Dover where all 4 of their drivers got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Chase Elliott, the 2020 champion, he didn't have as good of a season this year. He only had 2 wins, but Chase Elliott was a contender to win every week as well, almost. Same thing with Larson. He won 10 races. William Byron won a couple. If I'm correct, Byron won 1 or 2, and then there's Bowman had 4 wins.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with you on that being the biggest story. Now, there's a lot of other big stories that happened this year, too. I mean, this Talladega weekend where first-time winners every single race.
Yeah.
Another one, too, is Brad Keselowski leaving Penske and going to co-own or basically be part owner of Roush Fenway Racing, which is now RFK. And I think that was another big storyline. Another one, too, was Chip Ganassi being sold out by Spire Motorsports. So, or Trackhouse, my fault. Was that Trackhouse?
Yeah, Trackhouse.
Yep, Trackhouse. That's what I meant. So, yeah, there's a good bit of storylines this year. And I think another one, too, is AJ Allmendinger, how well the season he had in Xfinity. He was a championship contender, and Colleague Racing showed their strengths.
Yeah. Next up, favorite paint scheme. Man, to me, it's another one of those questions where you have hundreds of paint schemes. It's hard to choose, like say, oh, here's the one that was good. And I know for me, it kind of came down to either Daniel Suarez's ComScope car or Corey LaJoie's, just his primary Schluter Systems car designed by Sean McGee, with just the flames. To me, it's just something about like the orange and the white and just putting some nice looking flames on a car. I feel like those are
Yeah.
probably like the two that I just I couldn't get enough of seeing on the racetrack.
Those are great schemes, but for me, my favorite paint schemes came from Kevin Harvick. He had a
Mhm.
couple really, really good schemes this year. The Subway one, the
Yeah.
Monster Jam one, and the one that was camouflage he ran at Dega. I don't know the names of any of those schemes in particular, but I really enjoyed those cars a lot. I think they provided a lot of flair,
Mhm.
and it made a lot of news because a lot of people was posting about it. And I think Harvick had the best schemes this year. It's hard to pick my favorite out of those that I mentioned.
Yeah, I feel like Stuart Haas always puts out some great cars, and I think Harvick. I I know for me the number changes a lot because even when you have paint schemes that look the same, but you just swap the numbers, it can do so much. And I feel like that number four just, I feel like it always puts a nice like ex- exclamation point, like whenever he has a paint scheme on there, just something about the
Yeah.
design or how it sits. Um, a biggest surprise. Um, I wasn't sure if the biggest surprise. I was like, oh, should that be a biggest surprise in a good way or a bad way? But I felt like just out of all the surprise, like Hendrick was something that we knew what they're capable of. Like it's not new to have Hendrick, dominate. But to me, the biggest surprise was the cliff that Kevin Harvick fell off of. Because I think
Yeah.
at the beginning of the year, if you would have said, well, Harvick's not going to win a race, I think most people would have laughed you out of the room.
Yeah. I would have.
Yeah, and I felt like it was just, it seemed like, and I know he made the chase. I know, he made it into what was the round of 12.
Yeah.
But I felt like it was, other than one or two races, it was hard for me to think of races that I thought, man, Harvick's up here, or like, man, at the end of the race, you're gonna have to contend with him. Whereas, with Larson or Hamlin, every race you knew, okay, they're going to play into this at some point. At some point, you're gonna have to deal with them today. And I felt like it was just surprising because even when Stuart Haas has had bad years, you still had Harvick carrying the banner for the team.
Yeah.
So it is, to me, is a big surprise, and it makes me really wonder about, come next year, are we going to have Harvick return to the happy Harvick we know of, or is it going to be more of the same?
Yeah, that's a great point. And that was one thing I was going to say for some of my biggest surprises was the downfall of Sure Haas race. Now I thought they're
Mhm.
going to have a much better year this year, but they struggled a lot.
Yeah.
Eric Almirola did get the win at Loudon. But Cole Custer, I thought he was going to make the playoffs, and he had a
Mhm.
terrible season. I can't recall where he finished in the points, but he was far down in the 20s.
Yeah.
We saw Kevin Harvick not win a race, like you mentioned. A couple other surprises for me was Penske. I thought Penske was going to have a better year,
Mhm.
but they kind of struggled too. Keselowski didn't win much. Joey Logano only won once, which
Yeah.
surprised me. Ryan Blaney, Ryan Blaney, he had a great season. And last year, after what happened last year, where he just flopped in the playoffs, I
Mhm.
didn't think Blaney was going to have a good year this year. And he
Yeah.
turned around and he did great. I mean, he won 2 in a row at one point, if I'm correct. He won at Daytona and Michigan,
Mhm.
and he won another race as well. And Ryan Blaney definitely carried Penske this year, or this
Yeah.
past season. I will say another big surprise, of course, is Brad Keselowski leaving Penske. That surprised me a lot as well. So, yeah, there's going to be surprises this year. Yeah, I mean, you can even say that for the Truck Series as well with Ben Rhodes and some guys like Zane Smith. I didn't think Zane Smith was going to have a good season, and he goes out and makes the
Yeah.
championship four. And then Daniel Hemrick winning the championship in the Xfinity Series, getting the win in the final race. That was pretty crazy too.
Mhm.
So yeah, there was multiple surprises this year.
So looking on to 2022, the next question was someone to watch next year, and I think it boils down to two people for me, and it's number one, Ryan Blaney, I feel like this year was a coming out year for him showing that he's not just the third guy at Penske. Like, he's a guy that can win. He's a guy that can carry the team. And I think that next year we're going to see a more confident Blaney hit the track. I think that he definitely makes into the playoffs. I think he makes a pretty deep run into it. Another guy I think is going to be Austin Dillon. And I thought that he'd pick up a win during the playoffs. He didn't. But, you know, a lot of people, they give Austin crap for this or that. But, you know, if I remember correctly, he was, I believe, in the regular season standings, he was sitting 11th or 12th. And if it wasn't for people like Kurt Busch, Eric Almirola, Michael McDowell, Christopher Bell, because I want to say that Bell was out. There was someone else that was out of the top 16 that knocked him out. But, you know, Austin Dillon didn't have a season where he was running 18th in points. He had a season where he was close to top 10. And I think that with the new car, I think with, you know, just RCR being elevated, I think next year Austin makes it into the chase. Honestly, I feel like I would not be surprised if he makes it to the round of 8. I don't think that they're championship 4, but I just feel like RCR's, they're starting to hit their stride. He's got Tyler Reddick there, you know, to give him some support. And I feel like we're so close to that. As I say that, just watch next year. Like, Austin Dillon finished 30th in points. So if he doesn't do well, I don't want to be blamed for jinxing him. But,
you know, I was going to say one of mine I was going to say to look out for was Tyler Reddick. Honestly, he did really well this year. He had some consistent finishes. He was up in the top 5 multiple times with chances to win. I predicted he would win the first Talladega race, but he didn't. But Austin Dillon, I feel like Austin Dillon started off the season very good, and then it kind of went downhill.
Yeah.
And I would say, in my opinion, I think Tyler Reddick will have a better season than Dillon. But a couple other drivers I'm thinking to look out for is Christopher Bell. Bell did really good this past season at short tracks, and he was up in the front in the top 10 consistently, even though his points finish wasn't that great. He still made the playoffs. He had that win at the Daytona Road Course. And I feel like Bell is going to be someone we need to look out for next year. Any other drivers? I mean, I really hope to see Trackhouse do well, because I'm a huge Ross Chastain fan, as well with Chase Briscoe and Eric Almirola right now. Those are my 3 favorite Cup Series drivers. But other than that, I don't have any other driver in particular to look out for. But I would say Colleague Racing, I know they're going to be in the Cup Series this coming season, and I think that with all the progress they've made in the Xfinity Series, I don't think they'll have a absolutely great season in 2022, but I think they're a team to look out for in the future. I think they'll keep getting better and better.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. And then finally, so the last question, you know, going into this year, you know, we had 3, I'd say the 3 main new teams that are entering. You had 23XI, Trackhouse, and Team Live Fast. And there's a lot of talk out of kind of those 3 teams. How are they going to compare? And I mean, I think at a certain point you have, you know, apples to oranges, because you have 23XI with this connection with Gibbs, and then you have Trackhouse that, they have a connection with RCR, but people don't see them on the same. And then you have Team Live Fast, you know, down here with, they don't have this giant alliance, you know, where they're getting cars from this place or that. So out of those 3, you know, it's, I don't think necessarily that you can look at one team and say, yeah, this team was better, but I think that Trackhouse, kind of looking at each one specifically, they impressed me the most, just because there was some runs at the beginning of the year where Daniel Suarez was in the mix. You know, like I forget where he finished in the Bristol race, but I remember for a good point of that, he was at the dirt race, you know, up there. It's a couple
I think
of
he
other
finished
races.
3rd. Yeah, I think he finished 3rd or 4th.
there's a couple more up there, and I feel like out of the three new teams, that's the one that I feel like I think that they're going to have more of an upward ascension, I guess, this year. I wouldn't be so surprised to see him grab a win. I think Team Live Fast, I feel like honestly, all of them, I would give them A's for this year because Team Live Fast, even though they didn't, they're not going to have the equipment to go compete for wins. I can't remember a single race where they were in the way. And I think when you're a small team building, that's your whole goal. Just don't be the person that wrecks the lead or whatever. And yeah, and I think that with 23XI, with them, like, they grab the win. So to me, it's a good year because that the whole goal is to like put Michael Jordan in victory lane, put Bubba in victory lane, and if you picking up a win, I think it's good. I think next year you're gonna have those growing pains because sometimes you kind of have to take that step back when you now have that second car coming in. But once again, I've learned that I'm horrible with predictions. So just watch next year 23XI go out and win 15 races, and that's one thing I've learned. But yeah.
Well, I mean, it's really hard to predict, with the new teams. And I remember this past season, I was very doubtful about 23XI. I was like, I don't think they're going to finish more than 26th in the standings. And I didn't even think Bubba Wallace was going to get a win. Now, I will say Kurt Busch, him going there, I don't think that's a good move for him because I think he was doing just fine in the one car. But we'll see. I mean, maybe he could prove us wrong. Yeah, Kurt Busch, he has no plans of retiring, that's for sure. And like you mentioned with the newer teams, I feel like a lot of them improved. Chip Ganassi Racing, which is now Trackhouse, they had some really good runs last year. I mean, you mentioned with Daniel Suarez, Kurt Busch won at Atlanta. Chastain was up front multiple races. I think Chastain got second at Michigan or Kansas in another race. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know about Wood Brothers Racing and Richard Petty Motorsports, but they have Harrison Burton now in the 21, and Eric Jones had an year with Richard Petty Motorsports. So I don't think honestly don't think they're going to improve any. But I'm sorry I interrupted you there.
Oh no, you're good. Yeah, I think that's you also, like we sit here and we say like, oh man, well, look at Blaney, look at Dillon. Look at whoever, but you also have the whole unknown of the next gen car. So I think that'll also, that kind of throws a monkey wrench in this whole thing. Is do you have people rise up? Do you have the bigger teams automatically with their engineers pick up on everything and it's just business as usual with Larson and Hamlin up front? Or I think that 2022 is shaping up to be an exciting year because I think you'll have a mixture. I think you're going to have, a Larson and Hamlin, dominate, pick up wins. But I think also, like, it wouldn't be unheard of to see a smaller team pick up some. And like you said, Tyler Reddick's always already running up there. So if RCR hits on something, it's nothing to see Tyler Reddick pick up a win or two at the beginning of the year. And now you're locked into the chase, or I don't know. It'll be exciting to watch for next year.
Yeah. I will say next year I'm definitely looking forward to this next season. There is some things that they changed that I don't agree with, like the single lug nut. But I really like the schedule they had this past season too. I really liked how they added more road courses and took away some tracks that didn't need to be there anymore. But everyone has their own opinions. There's even some that I wish, like some suggestions I have, which I know will not happen, but one of them or two of them would be not having 2 Las Vegas races and not having 2 Kansas races. I just I'm not too fond of those tracks, but there's not a whole lot to complain about. We shouldn't really complain a whole lot anyways, but NASCAR's changing. It's they're improving in ways, but they're also downgrading in ways.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be a challenge for a lot of race fans next year, like you said, with the lug nut, and even with like the number moving. I think you're gonna have, which I feel like Trackhouse with I think it's Kyle Sykes over there. I think he's proven that it can be done. There can be a good paint scheme with the number up there. So I feel like I'm gonna hold out hope, have a little bit of faith, and we'll see once Daytona hits. We'll see what the designers have put on the track and all. But Christian, once again, I want to thank you for joining me and kind of walking through this and kind of reviewing this great season we had, as well as looking at what 2022 could hold.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on. I had a great time talking about this, and appreciate you having me on today for this video.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.